Welcome to Victoria's Nirvana with your host, Victoria Lynn Ravenwood, where it's all about evolving your mind, being creative, and daring to live an enlightened life.
Hello. With everything that's been happening lately with the MeToo movement and women speaking up and healing themselves and working to process things that have happened, I thought it would be good to define a couple of terms or concepts, especially those that are used to tell women how to react to things, particularly the terms to let it go. Now, in my PhD program right now, we're studying terms for research, and those terms are axiology, epistemology, ontology, and it took me a while to really get the concepts of these words and what they mean. And as I was doing so, I realized that without knowing the meaning of the words, the whole concept and all the discussion questions, everything we were going through was just impossible to move forward with, because you have to understand every word that you're using and how you perceive that word and how it works in the context of the whole discussion and ways of using it. So it's important to understand the definition of the word, especially in these cases where you're talking about research or very concrete things in life, whether it's reading, working, studying, or just that kind of intellectual type of communication. But when it came to healing modalities, I've heard people telling a lot of women, especially in the Me Too movement, to let it go, let something go. And while we know pretty much what that means, it means to drop something, you're holding it, so you let it go, and we can go through the semantics of it. But this term is so much more abstract than that. And what a woman hears is that judgment and almost a condescending diminishment of what she's been through, that she's holding it. She's the one holding on to it. And if she would just let it go, everything would be okay. So the whole argument and the whole meaning and felt sense behind this word is very judgmental and very hurtful to the person hearing it, because it's putting a lot of the problem onto her. She's holding it. If she would just let go, she's the problem. There's a very much of a power structure there within that term, let it go, let it go. And victims hear that term and it just can rub them the wrong way and set them on a defensive. And rightfully so, because we know what the definition of that word is. We know it means to drop something. Don't hold on to it, don't grasp at it, let it go. We know what that means, but viscerally, but the feeling sense, the concept, the meanings that come behind it, and the power structures that come behind it, and the feeling of diminishment that comes with such statements being told to victims is very powerful, and it can really trigger someone who's been through something, because they're not understanding why. They're thinking that there's something wrong with them, that they haven't let go, and they're getting mad about it. But they are rightfully so picking up on this whole dynamic and this whole power structure, this whole blame and judgment thing that goes on and rides right underneath that kind of a statement, let it go, let it go. And it's just not a very good term to use toward any victim or anybody who's been through any kind of trauma, is to tell them to just let it go, because it puts it all on them. So instead, what I think feels much better would be to say, leave it behind. Just leave it behind. Leave it where it belongs, which is behind you. That puts it more on the object rather than you as the subject. It doesn't belong with you. It is not good enough to be with you. It shouldn't be with you. It doesn't deserve to be with you. You leave it behind you. That just viscerally, that just kinesthetically, that just feels less judgmental, less about power structure. It feels so much more empowering. The visual that you get from that is more empowering. You're leaving it behind, because the object, it, what happened, it is the focus of that statement, and puts it onto that rather than onto the victim. It's not that the victim is holding it and the victim would only just let it go, that everything would be fine and diminishing it, and can't we all just move forward if you would only let go, but you're not letting go and the problem is you. Leaving it behind has, more empowering sense of it doesn't belong with you, it's not good enough for you, you don't need to carry it with you, and it leaves it all on the thing that happened, leaving that behind you. The whole structure of that term works so much better for victims to hear as far as moving on than let it go. So defining words is a very important thing in so many areas of our life and our study. And I learned that through a lot of these terms we've been doing. Axiology, is one of them. Fascinating word about values and spirituality and why it was created, because they needed to have a concept for values in a living experience and beauty in an object and how that's a value as well. So axiology was created just to encompass all these things. So, words get created, concepts get created. It's great to define them, and we need to understand them to do our work well and to study and read and write well. But in some cases, words are more of a concept, or they're more of a felt sense. There can be more of a power structure behind them. There can be judgments behind them, and those things are not found within the definition. So when a victim hears let it go or something like that and they have a reaction, it's because of all these other things that are not part of the definition of the word or the term. So it's important to watch how you speak to someone who's been dealing with harassment and learn to speak a language that doesn't have as much of that blame or judgment or power structure behind it and is more empowering. So I definitely think choosing the term leave it behind you is definitely a better way to go when speaking with victims, not telling them to let it go. That can just be very triggering and dismissive in the victim's ears. So it's interesting to watch the kind of words that you use and ask yourself how they would make you feel. And look for those words and terms that have a lot of this concept or power structure behind that, or judgment behind it. Because we know what the definition of the word let it go means, but we also need to figure out what the underlying message of saying that means and what the dynamics of oppression and power structures can be behind a lot of these terms, so that they are so much more than the definition. So have fun. Maybe go find a few words and look them up in the dictionary and see what you find and see if the actual definition fits well with what you thought it meant. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Victoria's Nirvana. Subscribe and visit victorialynnravenwood.com to sign up for the newsletter.